the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial matter so much? A lot of people might think, oh, this is just a celebrity trial, it's a distraction. SNL kind of made a weird jab at like, this is just for fun and we have to worry about Ukraine. And yes, sometimes it's easy to kind of reduce a celebrity trial to that, but this isn't really, it doesn't hold attention because of celebrity. It holds attention because this is actually exposing the nuance of human nature and the duplicity and deception in how people portray themselves versus how they really are. And the audio recordings of the couple really show a dynamic of that manipulation and deception and duplicity that contrasts with the public image that they want to portray. Particularly with Amber Heard, we see somebody who is very keen on kind of having the, almost looking like an ingenue, looking more of a sweet or pitiable, pity play kind of false self kind of portrayed, but then in the recordings we see her acting completely different and completely taunting and cackling and gaslighting. And so the reason why this trial holds appeal is because we're caught up in only narratives, and we kind of have a ideology that informs those narratives. So the news gives us a version of events, and it always tells us who the hero and who the villain is. And same with our TV shows and movies and books. Everything has kind of gotten a little stale because we've gotten kind of immersed into the SJW view of the world. And so when we're seeing a trial that's actually emphasizing truth over narrative, and truth in all of its ugliness and nuance and multi-variables, we're really, that's refreshing because it's actually offering us dimensional characters, so to speak, that are really providing a better look at human nature, the shadow side, the false self, the idealized self. We're getting a sense of that in this trial, and that's why we haven't had that in a long time. We have it with certain shows. Usually that's how we get that, like Breaking Bad was such a show. It's probably one of the most successful shows of the past few years, and everybody loved that because, again, that was like holding up a mirror to showing how someone presents themselves versus their shadow side. And so what this trial is doing is getting us out of, we've been in this polarity politically where we've been obsessed with kind of the COVID good, the COVID bad, and who's bad, who's good. And then we constantly get stories lectured to us and framed in a certain way. And same with this, we've been told that, we've been lectured that believe women and that Amber Heard is the saint and that Johnny Depp is evil, Hollywood power. That's the story we've been spoon-fed. But as it unravels, we're actually seeing, based on evidence and facts, that Amber was the instigator and abuser, and it's pretty blatant. Listen to the recordings. And so what we're getting is we're getting back to an emphasis on fact and truth over narrative, and specifically over the one-dimensional ideology narratives that we're always told things happen in this way. And whenever there's just a variation on that, notice that everyone gets a little mum. They don't like when you go off the pattern of. It's the same with people when they see a libertarian or Republican or moderate-minded minority or LGBTQ, if you see someone in those communities that's actually on the side of libertarian, Republican, moderate instead of liberal, it's like there's just this kind of resistance because that doesn't go with the narrative that the left perpetrates. The left likes to perpetrate that these groups, these oppressed groups and marginalized communities are on the side of the left, and if not, then they must have internalized misogyny or internalized racism, and they have all these words, or internalized homophobia. So the left always makes it like you're either this or you must hate yourself. That's their narrative. And that's not how reality works. A lot of people in those communities left the left because the left is extremely didactic and extreme, and they're tired of it, and they left. So that's what's so nice about this is the reason why there's like SNL had a resistance to actually making a sketch that poked fun at Amber Heard. That's because they choose narrative over truth. So their narrative is believe women and white men bad. So they can't handle that there's complexity, nuance, and other variables to consider in reality. So they do a really safe, stale sketch that really just didn't get to the crux of why this trial is so entertaining and why it holds us. It didn't even seem to be someone that watched the trial, because there was just watching the trial itself. It's a sketch in itself with some of the lines about makeup and covering up bruises, and there's certain elements of it that are already fodder that could have just been used verbatim. But SNL, of course, is caught in that same paradigm that's very limiting and very narrow-minded and rigid, where, we can really only make fun of Johnny Depp in this because that fits our narrative. So we're only going to make fun of him, and we're gonna almost like have one little, like a tip of a toe maybe in the pool of making fun of Amber Heard. But not really. Of course, what did SNL do? They worked in the minorities as the service people who worked for these rich white people, and had a whole narrative of how they were reacting, like, oh, these crazy people. See, they can't structure reality in anything other than the rich white bad people, and then the oppressed minorities who work for them, even though that's actually not a depiction of what's funny or what is remarkable about that case. But they're framing it in a way that's just fitting the narrative that they want to present, which is honestly like propaganda. The service people we don't even know if their identities are in those communities. So it's actually a really reductive narrative to just assume that the service people are Hispanic and black. So SNL actually perpetrates a lot of exploitive, reductive attitudes about minorities and those communities. So I actually find this constant need to assume that white equals rich and rich and bad is really, it gets old, and it's just not accurate. And the need to do that is what I question. There's something about insidious and strange that narrative is constantly pumped into us, because it's actually really disempowering to grow up as if you are in a minority group and constantly be told that you are oppressed and less than, and no matter what you do, there's these systems of bad white people out to get you. That's creating a really disempowered narrative that you're always having to fight up against that. And there's something, I question the motives of those who want to perpetrate that as a narrative. Yes, I believe we want to show the facts of corruption and those kind of power dynamics, but you don't have to reduce everything to a power dynamic. The Johnny Depp Amber Heard case has more to do with the emotional abuse dynamics of somebody that can deflect at any cost, and kind of the narcissistic woman controlling her self-image, and to the point of absurdity cannot take any responsibility. So that's the humor. That's the thing that we want to satirize. That's the ego here. This isn't about the typical story. This is about the hot starlet who's her own it's kind of this Medusa kind of rage Kali goddess woman who has this extreme blind spot of arrogance. That's what we're going to make. That's like so much fodder for material, because comedy always pokes fun at that egocentric person. So your SNL misses the mark because they're trying to stay true to their framing, and their ideology, which their ideology is just like a sketch. It's not really, and the truth is never a sketch. It's actually like a three-dimensional movie, or it's just, there's so much more to it. It's not just this tiny little pixelated image, right? So that's why the trial holds our interest. We have a refreshing sense of the truth unfolding and all of its complexity, and we are not committed to narratives, and that's refreshing in our culture. And it's refreshing, and it's dynamic, and it holds our attention because it's holding up a mirror to us individually and collectively and showing us all of our own lies, deceit, and how the idealized self. And that's what's interesting. That's what makes life interesting. It's not, and that's what usually art has been in that place to show us that. Whereas this trial is actually showing us that with that mix of, we get a sense of justice being served, and that feels good because we feel as though the truth actually matters in a time where truth hasn't mattered in a while. Truth has been completely smeared, maligned, misrepresented, and mischaracterized in favor of lies for so long that this is extremely refreshing because it's about truth over story.